All right. Hello and welcome to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. The guest speaker that is going to drop a lot of knowledge today, we were chit-chatting behind the scenes, and I'm excited to learn from her today. I'm trying to get her to come down to Patagonia so she can share all of the knowledge and actually, practice what she preaches out here as well. But before we get started, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping rules so that everyone feels comfortable and confident in this next hour. So, of course, if you all have joined a previous Chat and Learn, we have switched platforms. So we are no longer using Zoom. We are on Bevy. So if you want to participate, which I highly encourage you to do so, I love when we have, folks who want to come on camera with us and hop off mute. There will be a little different way to do that. So you'll just write a +1 in the general chat box. That will let me know that you want to join our guest speaker and I on camera. And, you can voice your thoughts, you can voice your reflections or voice your questions yourself. Otherwise, feel free to write in the chat box, in the general chat box, anything you want, a dream you had last night, some tips and tricks of your own. There is a dedicated Q&A slot that you'll see for to drop your questions there. And the reason I would love if you all utilize that is because if there's someone else live joining us and they have the same question that you do, or they have the same curiosities, they can upvote your question, and I'll make sure to get to that question before we wrap up this chat. If you do hop off of mute, you will be featured in our live recording as this is being recorded. And again, we'd love for you to follow us on socials so you can keep up with all the great chats that we've got in store for you. So briefly, I just want to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm super excited to moderate this chat today. I consider myself a Renaissance woman because I wear many hats. One of them being what I'm doing right now, interviewing beautiful minds, speaking about, how we can just practice self-care more, really diversify the workspace and just, be our best selves. So if you want to keep up with my current projects, you can go to thepositiveforceteam.org and you can sign up for our newsletter, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our awesome guest speaker today, Joyce. Joyce, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
Gosh, that's a lot. Well, thank you guys so much for inviting me to connect with your community today. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to meet you, Mariella. Mariella or Mariella Marie, you like it all?
Whatever you want. People call me all kinds of things, especially now that I live in Argentina. So whatever feels natural for you.
Got it. Let's see. I am something of a serial entrepreneur. I have a background as a lawyer, but I've always been very entrepreneurial in my spirit. I started my first company actually while I was in law school with my sister, which was a very bad idea. Not the working with my sister part. That was great. But starting a business while I was in law school was not my best plan. And since then, I have been working through various companies, founded 4 different companies. And the most recent is the one that's really nearest and dearest to my heart. It's 99 Walks, and we are on a mission to get 1 million women walking, because throughout my life, one of the constants for me has been a regular intentional walking practice, which is what we're going to spend, I think, the majority of our time together today talking about. So that's the heart of what I'm doing right now. I had the honor of taking the TEDx stage last year to talk about how walking together, how walking with other people can help combat loneliness, because loneliness is really a major problem we're facing, not just in the US, but worldwide. And that was before the pandemic. So all of the challenges that we have been facing as women in particular, but people in general, those challenges have been obviously terribly exacerbated over the course of the last year. And that's kind of a little bit of my background. I wrote a book. I'm looking at my own bio, right? Like I can't even remember. I'm like, what? There's something else I'm supposed to say. Yeah, I wrote a book about 1.5 years ago called Walk Your Way to Better, which is really more about mindset than it is about walking. But my hope with the book is it's 99 thought starters and things that I think people should spend some time thinking about. And my call out, my ask to my readers is that they absorb one of those sections, and they're super, super short, and then take a walk, because walking gives you the opportunity to really think about things. And that's opportunity that in our always on world, many of us don't have enough time to do. So I think that's the overview, and let's take it from there.
Awesome. I love that. So actually yesterday, I spoke on where, so we have an ambassador program here at Power to Fly. And actually I was being interviewed on something that I'm passionate about speaking about, which is the importance of emotional intelligence. And actually the headline was navigating the loneliness epidemic through emotional intelligence. And I mean, I know we're going to vibe throughout this next hour. So I'm super excited to hear from you and just to see how we can align with, the power of, using your body, connecting with your body, connecting your passions, learning how to just think outside of the box, but getting more out of the linear way of existing in the world and being more creative. Can you go over some of the principal themes that you see on the screen here that we're going to speak about? And if you're joining us live, feel free to use this time to ponder on some questions or reflections, and you can go ahead and write those in the chat box.
So I always talk about walking, a regular walking practice, and hopefully we'll get to the question that I get a lot, which is the difference between what we call intentional walking and step counting, and the value and difference between those two things. So when I'm talking about walking, I'm generally talking about an intentional walking practice and the impact that that can have on your mind, your mood, and your body. I usually look at it through the lens of those three different things. How to transform your walking into a habit. Tricky. Building positive habits, on the one hand, is really simple because a tremendous amount of research has been done around what it is that triggers our habits and how we can make the most of them. So it would seem that if you understand the mechanism, it should be really easy to put it into play. But in fact, it's much more complicated than that. And some of what science has to say about walking, again, for your mind, your mood, and your body. And one of the things that I really wanted to focus a little bit on for this community and this group is the way walking can help fuel your productivity and your performance, because we are all trying to get more out of our days, and to do so in the most intentional and present way that we can. And walking can help on all of those things, which sounds like a lot, right? That sounds like I'm kind of feel like I'm overselling it, right? But it's really the balm.
I think you're speaking your truth and you're passionate about it. So it's actually it's what I prefer to hear versus, someone trying to sell something. I don't think you're sounding selly at all. I love to see people walk their walk. I love that that is also like a, no pun intended, especially with this conversation. But, the intentionality that you're putting behind your passion, it reads true. So thank you so much for sharing today. I'm just going to take the share screen off now so that we can see ourselves. And then I also want to invite folks who are joining us live, if you do want to hop on camera with us, just write a +1 in the general chat box. That will let me know that you want to join Joyce and I on camera, or, to share your voice as well. Otherwise, feel free to write in the general chat box. And I see that we've got folks representing Kentucky, Buenos Aires. Let us know where you're calling from. I see we got some more folks on the line. Joyce is calling from Long Island. I'm calling from Patagonia in Argentina. And let's just start with this first question here. So how has walking impacted your life?
It's such a big question, and probably best told through the first time in my life. And I have shared this story before, so some of you guys who are here who know me well and have hung out with me in the past have heard this story, I'm sure. But my dad is a retired coach and athletic director, and he's one of those people, one of those guys who really knows people. Like, he just gets people. And I walked in the front door of my house when I was about 16, and I had had a really crappy day. And of course, at this point, I have no idea what it was, right? It was high school, so could have been a bad grade, could have been mean girls, could have been a boy, who knows, right? And my dad took one look at me and he said, "Go for a walk and then we'll talk." And it was a beautiful spring day. And I love my dad, and my dad always gives really good advice. So I took his advice and I dropped my backpack and I walked out the door, and I took a 2-mile walk in my neighborhood. And I actually even know how long it is because I remember the route that I walked. And when I walked back in my door, I was really aware of how my entire mood had shifted. And it was the first time in my life that I acknowledged or recognized the impact that a walk had on my mood. And that experience has always stayed with me. So walking has been a tremendous part of my self-care, more mentally and emotionally than anything else, though walking has also been like the way I have kept my body moving, maintained pretty much a healthy weight throughout my life with, definitely some ups and downs as all of us. And the way that I make time for myself to think, because that's another thing that's in really short supply for many of us. So walking has just been just something I have always done.
Love that. And I love the discovery of, something as simple, let's say, but as impactful as walking, to help self-regulate, which is one of the pillars in emotional intelligence that, first is self-awareness. And then the second is self-regulation, and how walking, getting some fresh air, changing your perspective, changing your not, changing your breathing rhythm as well, right? Because maybe it's different from just sitting down, and just being more connected to your body, and how that helps with, processing things and, inspiring creativity, let's say, and basically in this case, talking yourself off of the edge, right? Through walking. So I love that is your experience. And it has me reflecting on a moment. Actually, I think I can share a moment with you. When I was living in Los Angeles, after I had graduated college, I studied theater and film, and I went to Los Angeles, and I was having a hard time. As a lot of folks know, it's difficult to pursue writing and acting in the creative arts in Los Angeles for whatever reasons, lots of reasons. And I was just like, I ended up, being kind of stuck to working in restaurants, which wasn't my goal. I mean, I love folks that decide to work in restaurants, but I was like, I didn't go to school to be a waitress, and I'm barely able to pay the bills. And I started to get into this depressed, and I'm not a person who gets depressed. And so I was like, okay, this is interesting. I was told to reuse a mantra that my friend had let me borrow in this difficult time, which is just, affirmation, and to take your mantra for a walk is what I did. And it was the same thing, like, oh, I can, and I had this clarity that I no longer wanted to stay in Los Angeles, that I wanted to figure out what I needed to do. And that actually allowed me to come back to Argentina after I had studied abroad years before. And now I've been here for lots of years. So I shared the sentiment of just like the clarity that walking can bring, even though it sounds like such a small thing, it helps with self-regulation and self-awareness. So thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah. There's so much, just your story in and of itself, right? Like we could unpack that, like that little story of the clarity, the creativity, the self-regulation, which is a phrase I've never used in the context of walking, but it's spot on for sure. But the one simple thing, and we're going to talk about so much, I know, but the one thing you left out, you talked for a moment about connecting with your body and getting back into your body, and walking certainly does that. But there's like a really simple thing it does, which is it fires up your happiness hormones, right? So we just stop and I believe that walking is magic because there's so many things that come into play, but at its simplest, like you get your dopamine, you raise your serotonin levels, you get some oxytocin, especially if you're walking with someone else, and you get your endorphins. And if you do nothing else, that's just going to make you feel better because that's the way we're wired. So it just like starts there in its simplest.
I'm actually going to hold you there for a moment because it tackles one of the questions that someone submitted offline. What benefits does walking have besides weight loss? So you're naming some now. And how can someone get out of the stigma? Okay, I'm just doing this for weight loss, and also realize all the other things that come with it.
Mariella, you said we only have an hour.
Yes.
So it's just a tremendous question. So I'm going to break it down into the three things that we talked about, right? Mind, mood, and body. How about we do that? Because we'll put body last, because walking for weight loss, walking is a tremendous addition to maintaining a healthy weight, keeping your body moving, all of that. But there's so much more to it. So starting with your mind. So the research shows a couple of things. In the immediate, walking helps improve your decision-making capabilities. It fires up your brain. And the researchers aren't entirely sure why that is in the short term, whether it's additional blood flow and circulation, your body's just moving. Is it that you're away from your distractions? Is it, they're not 100% sure why, but they have shown through research and testing that it does improve your decision-making, meaning it enables you to make better decisions. It empowers your executive function. So that's number one, especially walking in nature. I assume you're familiar with the idea of decision fatigue. So
I am not. Please dive into that. Yes. Actually, well, I mean, it makes sense. If I think of it, I've never heard it coined that way, but yes, of course, it makes sense. But I'd love to hear your rationale there.
Decision fatigue has been identified, and that's a term of art in the sciences. And essentially, what they have seen is that every decision you make is reducing your capacity to make good decisions. It is literally the reason why they put candy at the register, because after you've tried to sort between like 15 different flavors of peanut butter, by the time you get to the register, you're like, I don't know, I just need a candy bar. So what they have found is that being in nature helps to replenish that decision-making capability, which is part of your executive function. So that
makes a lot of sense. And one of the top pillars in my personal philosophy is we need to return to nature, just as Homo sapiens. You know, I feel like we're so disconnected, and I'm sure we could dive in deep there. But I love that this decision fatigue, is it called? Yes, I love that one of the remedies is nature and nature walks. And I love that I have I'm very privileged right now to be in the mountains, and I go into the forest, and like I just want to like sit under a tree for forever, you know. And
so coming to visit you. Look at the time. I've now known you for 20 minutes. I'm already like planning my trip, and I'm moving in. So I hope you're cool with that.
Yes, totally. I'm totally cool. I want to be the hostess with the mostest down here in Patagonia, because again, a return to nature. Imagine if we can get folks walking out here, yep. And then coming back to work and being more mindful and being more connected, you know, to their purpose, knowing their purpose, you know, going for a walk, you get to realize, well, what am I doing this for? How do I define success? What is success for me? You know, you have all of these, the big life questions that come to mind. I would actually love to hear, how do you silence the mind when you walk, or is it just like a natural thing that happens for you?
So I walk, this is kind of a weird and long answer, but I walk in different ways for different purposes. So I have 4 different ways that I walk. I walk with other people because walking together is a really interesting dynamic for a host of reasons. We can talk about that. I will sometimes take a particular challenge or problem or question or something I'm working on and try to be almost meditative and really deliberate in my walk to keep my focus on that question. And that's an exercise in mindfulness and intentionality, because invariably, like with any kind of meditative practice, your mind starts to wander, you've got to bring it back. But I do that in the context of working through a particular question. Sometimes I just need to fire up the music and throw myself my own little dance party while I walk. And then the last is walking with no agenda and walking in silence, which is what I do the vast majority of the time. And it takes 10 minutes for me. Everybody's a little bit different, but it takes 10 minutes usually, which is about the time that those happiness hormones start to fire for most people. And usually my mind will start to settle. Somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes, I find the first 10 minutes, it's like any kind of movement and exercise, man, those first 10 minutes are not nearly as much fun.
Mm-hmm. So I want to hold you there for a moment, because a lot of our audience, you know, we speak about, you know, how to be balanced in the workplace, how to make sure that you're, practicing self-care and not just being, burnt out all the time. So this question here that someone has submitted offline kind of tackles this, time and workload. So could you share ways to squeeze walking in when working full-time, caregiving, and exam prep studying?
Yeah. It's not easy, right? It's not easy. And I do just please remind me, I want to get back to the other benefits to your mind for walking, because there were a couple more that I didn't get to, and I don't want to forget. Listen, you guys, time is really precious. Time is precious for everyone. It is the thing that we think that we don't have enough of. And there is truth to that. But I'm going to give you a body fact. I actually write about this, and I'm working on a new book. And I'm going to tell you a story. So sorry, it's a long story. You're going to learn that many things with me come with a story. So when I was a first year associate at a large law firm in New York, they had us all come in on a beautiful spring Saturday. It was a June Saturday, to spend the entire day in a windowless conference room with two accountants. Nothing against the accountants, except it's a language that I do not speak, and I did not choose to go into accounting. Okay, so all of this associates were sitting in a horseshoe, and the two accountants are at the front of the room. And we get through the morning session, and I was a business major in college, so I kind of knew what was going on, but I was a terrible accounting student. And I say that that was my lowest grade in college. And I say that to say I sort of needed this seminar. It wasn't I would have benefited. So we have the morning, we break for lunch. I went and I got a sandwich. I took a walk because that's what I do. And we came back and we sat back down, and over the heads of the accountants was a giant clock. And I watched the clock, and I watched 15 seconds tick by. And I thought to myself, and I remember this like yesterday, right? And I thought, my life is 15 seconds shorter. I have no idea how much time I have, but I now have 15 seconds less of it. And I stood up and I picked up my bag, and my friend Marina was next to me. She's like, "What are you doing?" I said, I have to leave. And I walked out of the building into this glorious spring day, and I walked home. But what I have discovered through my research is that I was actually wrong. Because while we do have a limited time on this earth, there are a lot of things that we can do to change that time. Now, obviously, terrible things happen. If we've learned anything over the last year, it's that there are no guarantees for sure. But the research is that a regular walking practice can add 7 years to your life. So if you can find a way to get 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes into your day, you could literally be making your life longer. And I think if we're going to try to take a long view of our time on this earth, then, and this goes to what you preach about the importance of self-care and being intentional and all of that. It's short-sighted not to be. All of that said, it may be that this time in your life is not the time when you have the opportunity to take long 2-hour meandering walks, and just be okay with that, because whatever you're in right now, studying for exams, whatever, caring for, it's going to change. So be kind to yourself about where you are, but understand that you can have a very meaningful impact on the quality of your life, depending on how you prioritize things. I don't know if that really answers the question, but
absolutely. And then just to take it to let's say, and let's take this into the workplace. I find that, if I had to choose a product, if I could know that this programmer, sits behind its computer, his or her computer all day, and doesn't practice this form of emotional intelligence where you're disconnecting to reconnect with yourself, going for a 15-minute walk or going for a 2-hour walk. I feel like it can be highly dangerous to just be static and just be programming and not connecting with yourself and not connecting with the world, I'd rather buy that product that I know that someone has more self-awareness, more self-regulation, more empathy, all of these things that I feel like come with, going for a walk with no agenda, right? Like not going for a walk to figure out how to take over the world. It's like, I'm going for the walk to breathe a little more, get some fresh air, and how that brings clarity and how you can practice, maybe even reflecting on empathy, let's say, because those things come up, our emotions come up when we move our bodies. So I love that you're tapping into, just the benefit. I love that you got up and left at first. I love that you did that. And I love that you followed through with some research and how that, allowed you to see time and how to maximize your time. I feel like there's this illusory vision of productivity, especially in the workplace. It's like this always up, never ending, limitless productivity, but we live in cycles. Nature lives in cycles. And so how can we help to be, more holistic in the way that we live and the way that we work? So I know I'm philosophizing a little, but I enjoy philosophizing.
Bring it on. Well, let me get practical, actually, now that you brought me to the vision of somebody who's really just plugged in and working, 18 hours a day straight or whatever it is. The research is, if you want to get practical, going back to the mind, which is great because now it's going back to that first pillar we wanted to talk about. The research says that a walk will improve your creativity, your ability to generate fresh ideas by up to 60%. A 20-minute walk can make you 60% more creative. So at the times that you're stuck on a project, and what you think is, I need to muscle through this, in all likelihood, what you need to do is to walk away and come back to it. So if you think that it is indulgent to walk away from that studying, to walk away from that work, in fact, you're preparing yourself to perform at a higher level. Another piece when you talk about studying and exams is walking has been shown to improve your memory. And while it shouldn't be this way, because in my mind, exams should be testing your ability to think, the reality is a lot of exams are testing your ability to remember stuff. So the research shows that a regular walking practice is going to improve your memory in a material way. So another reason to break away and to find that 20 minutes, that half an hour, because it's going to make you more productive and it's going to make you function at a higher intellectual level.
I love that. Thank you for bringing in the practical advice as well, because I know that we need to hear that. We need to remember, that this is not a new concept. This is not something that, this is the first time we're hearing. Is this beneficial? There have been studies, there's research,
studies,
lots of research, right? And I'm sure we can read your book for more of, your personal journey and also the research that you've discovered in your journey. Which brings me to this next question that someone has submitted offline. Do you think walking is equally beneficial for children?
Oh, 100%. Oh, so this morning, because my new book is much more scientifically based, and I am not kidding you, this morning at 5 a.m., because that's when I write, I was researching children and walking and the value of walking to school and the fact that we have rebuilt our society, our communities in a way that most kids no longer walk to school, even though they used to. And I have a friend of mine out in San Francisco, Northern California, and in her community, she started what's referred to as a walking school bus, where, so they figure out a route, and different parents, because the kids are little, obviously once they're older, they can manage this on their own, but we're talking about younger kids, and the parents will take turns leading the walking school bus. So you start at Timmy's house, and then Timmy's mom takes Timmy and stops at Shonda's house and picks up Shonda, and they walk to school as a group. And one of the most fascinating things about this experience, at least in this one community, and it's not the only community to have created walking school buses, is that the parents tend to go even when it's not their day. Now let's just stop and think about this for any parents out there. You have an option. Somebody you know and trust is going to come by and pick up your kid And you could make yourself a cup of coffee. You could sit on your back deck. You could get to work. You could do all of those things. And instead, you're choosing to go with. So the research around walking to school, walking for kids, all the things, incidences of obesity are growing. You are teaching your children by not teaching them, by showing them the value for their mind, their mood, and their body of movement. And you are creating these lifelong habits of movement. So beyond the research around kids, beyond.
Great. I love that. I love that it's timely as well, right? Especially now with, most schools having to defer to virtual classrooms, and that just even takes out the walking school bus scenario even more. So,
kids walking around school, like they're, for my daughter is a high schooler and she's back in school now, but I will tell you, for months, she barely left her room.
Yeah, that's the reality of a lot of situations these days. How can someone stay motivated? Let's say, actually, this moves me to this next question here. I would love for you to also bring, the scenario that your daughter and many other, folks who are in school and who are working behind the computer during the pandemic these days, to chime in on that. So this question reads, I would love to go out for walks, but I can't do it alone. I find it a bit boring. Is there a community we can reach out to?
So a couple of things around that. If you find walking boring, one thing I will say to you is maybe try to push through that. Like I have a lot of trouble meditating. I think meditating is awesome. Everything I read about meditating it's awesome. Sitting still for I can meditate for 8 minutes. That's my absolute lifetime max. But I can walk for an hour. So it may be that developing an intentional walking practice and giving yourself that time and space, you may just need a little bit of practice, because I promise you the things that are rattling around in your brain, your thoughts, your creativity, they're not boring. You just need to give yourself the opportunity to tap into them. So that's first off. Second is music is everything. Music is life. You need the playlist that rocks your soul. That's option 2. And if you haven't found that music, it just means you just haven't found it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, because we all have it. It's so crazy to me. Marielle, I know you agree with this. Like it's so fascinating to me that the music that rocks my soul is going to be different than the music that rocks your soul. Like people's taste in music, it's crazy. But that magic playlist is out there for you. That's number 2. Number 3, if none of this is working, start with a book on tape. Let someone tell you a story. Let a podcast teach you something. And then I suppose the last piece is I am a tremendous advocate of people walking together. I did a whole TED Talk on the value of people walking together, because all kinds of crazy things happen when you're walking with somebody else. I'll give you one. Research says that if you're walking with somebody, in all likelihood, you will sync up your steps. Whether that person is taller than you, shorter than you, slower than you, if you watch, it's so interesting to look at people when they're out walking and you realize that they're walking in sync. So walking with people is awesome, but what I've learned, especially during the pandemic, is getting on the phone and walking with somebody while you're on the phone with them is not as good as being in person, but it's way better than you think it's going to be.
Suggestions. You're dropping so much knowledge. Yes, I love it. I'm taking notes too, because I want to share this with folks. Actually, I'll just share the video that we're recording right now with them. What was your reaction when you spoke about this at the TED Talk?
My personal reaction to,
like, what was your personal reaction speaking, to people about this topic you're so passionate about? And then on the other side, how did people react to this conversation?
I received some really incredible feedback. To be perfectly honest, I do a fair bit of speaking, and I love speaking, and I love talking to people. I like talking with people. I like connecting with people. Have you given a TED Talk?
Not, but 6 degrees of separation. I feel like since you were on the stage, I can kind of rub shoulders with you on that. It's a goal.
Well, I have an idea for you, so talk to me offline.
Great.
Seriously. But the TED format is really formulaic, and it's more of an acting experience than it is of a public speaking, if that makes any sense. Um, so it made me really nervous. Like I'm much happier to speak in front of 500 people than to speak in front of 120 people doing a TED talk. 1,000 people, like that's easy. 120 people delivering a TED talk was very stressful.
Look at that. Look at that. And actually, I mean, we have a lot in common because I remember this is the first time I spoke about the importance of emotional intelligence and inclusive community in the workplace. Lots to chew on. I'm in San Francisco. I'm on like the 45th floor of some fancy hotel. The room is full of, it's like during lunch too. So everyone is like, eating. I got them in a nice place. We're having a fireside chat. So it was like, okay, cool. It's a fireside chat, which is completely opposite of like a, TED Talk, like script kind of thing. And I'm nervous because I'm like, who am I to be sitting and interrupting this lunch experience for these folks? But I found that it was that the attention was there after having been fed. And that I was in a room full of, developers, programmers, CEOs, leaders on different levels. And I was challenging folks to connect more with their emotional intelligence. And it was kind of like faces were like, and this woman at the end was like, I love everything you said. Take my card. People weren't ready to hear this, but it's great that they're hearing this, and keep doing what you're doing, kind of thing. I was like, I'm just like sitting in front of them speaking about this thing that I'm passionate about as you are. And that helped me build confidence. But I feel like, something as provocative and as simple as walking or as emotional intelligence, and you share that in this like very, all eyes are on you and they want to get this like really deep thing out of you. And you're like, hey, just be with yourself more, write journal, take a walk. And they're like, you're right. So anyway, I asked that just because I was curious about your opinion, but we can totally talk more offline. I'm happy to.
Yeah.
I'd love to actually transition this conversation to building habits and creating habits, even when it might be tough for someone. So this question that was submitted offline reads, I have a hard time creating habits. I can't be consistent with them. Any recommendations that might help me include this walking routine in my life?
There are two ways to go about this. The beauty of walking, as my dad says all the time, is you don't have to plan it. You don't need any equipment. You don't need any special anything. You need a pair of sneakers or comfortable shoes, and you need to walk out your door. So one way to help build a walking practice is to be just super opportunistic about it, which is I have 15 minutes. I'm going to walk out my door and not turn it into this big thing, right? That's option number one. Be super opportunistic. Option number two is take a good, honest look at your day and figure out where it goes. You put it on your calendar, you make it a priority, and then you have to make it really simple for yourself. So by way of example, just about the last thing I do before I go to sleep at night is I take the clothes I'm going to wear the next morning and I put them in a basket in my bathroom. And honestly, before I'm even like awake, I'm dressed for a walk. So you need to kind of build it into your day and make it simple. Dogs are fantastic. If you have a dog and let's say that you feel that your window of opportunity is the moment you get home from work. If you hang the leash over the door, your dog will make sure you have that habit. Something I've heard from quite a few people is that a challenge that they have is when they get home from work. Once you're home and the work clothes are off, I suppose back in the day when we actually went to work, but those days are coming back, or at the end of the day when you've had it, if you sit down, you're done. If you stop moving, you're done, right? A body in motion stays in motion. A body at rest stays at rest. So there are a lot of people in the 99 Walks community who actually will change their clothes or change their footwear for a walk and go before they walk in their door from work. So you've got to look for the moments in your life. You have to make it a priority by putting it on your calendar. If you're somebody who lives by their calendar, which many of us do, not everybody, you've got to figure out the time of day and you have to commit to it. And the last thing I'll say, and we can talk all about I have a philosophy that motivation is a myth. It's the motivation myth. People keep saying, I don't have any motivation. And I keep saying, like, motivation is BS, because what I think is going on is that people, let me see if I can explain this. People who think they need motivation think that they have to wait until they feel like doing something to do it. When the reality is, you just have to do it whether you feel like it or not. You can't wait to be like, I'll walk, like I'm waiting until I feel like. Nobody feels like it. You talk to professional athletes, none of them feel like working out, like ever. Like, I don't know, 5 days a year, they wake up and they're like, oh, damn, like I'm ready to go. But most of the time, it's, I would rather sit on the couch and eat bonbons, because that's how we're wired. That's how our biology is wired. So you can't wait until you feel like it. And the last piece of it is that I often convince myself to walk or work out, because I do other things, physical things as well. Not because I want to do the thing, because I usually don't want to do the thing. What I want is to feel the way I know I'll feel after I do the thing. I don't want to walk. I just want to feel the way I feel after I walk. And the only way I get there is through. The only way to the end is through. Does that make sense?
Totally, absolutely. To be strategic about, how are you gonna really live to it instead of wish you could have done, like, that, because that feeling of regret is also not good, because then it's just a pile of, oh, I could have, I should have, tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. It's like, no, start today. There's a quote that I'm just gonna butcher right now, but oh gosh, the path of 10,000 steps starts with one step, or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but something like that.
Yeah. A journey of 10,000 steps begins with one.
Yeah, something like that. One foot in front of the other. Okay, so this hour has been flying by. We've got about 15 minutes left, and I do want to switch notes here. To get a little more, real with the current times and what's happening in the times. So there were some questions that were submitted about COVID, right? So I'm just going to pair this question that was submitted offline with a private question that I've just received right now. So COVID, clearly we're dealing with isolation. And I'm sure, I've been doing research too on how that, is aiding in the loneliness epidemic. Of course, we can dive in deep there, but how can someone, continue or begin to build a walking practice in the age of COVID when, we're told we need to stay indoors? And then also when certain, really harmful things are happening outside, let's say. So this private question reads, how do we get the benefits of walking if we don't feel safe to walk outside in light of the rise in anti-Asian hate crimes and the shootings this week?
Yeah. Sorry, I just got a message from someone who just texted me to say, I'm so sorry. I was so excited to be at your session today and I couldn't make it. Listen, it's a scary time. It's a scary time on so many fronts. And actually, wow, this is such a long story, but you just walked me into it, so I'm going to have to do it. So I don't know if this crossed the radar of anybody, but I had the great honor of, I'm blanking on his last name. It starts with a D and I'm going to mispronounce it. I'm so sorry, Sean. But there is a young African-American man who lives in Tennessee. And in June, he lives in a home that his grandmother had bought, which is a wonderful story. She bought it as a single Black woman in the South in the 60s. So obviously she's a woman that has some chops, right? And the community gentrified and became predominantly white, or almost all white. So this young Black man living in this community, and in June, he went to take a walk in his neighborhood. and he said he couldn't get off his front porch. Couldn't get off his front porch. And he realizes now in retrospect he was having a panic attack. And same thing happened the next day. And he called his mother and she said, "Oh no, you are not going to live in fear. I'm coming over and we're going to walk together." So they went and they took a walk, got home. And he said, by the time they got home, they had had a lovely walk, but by the time they got home, sort of the anger was building, right? The frustration and the anger and the it shouldn't be this way. And he took to social media and he posted nothing, he wasn't trying to spark anything. He had no intention other than to express himself. And he said, "I wanted to take a walk in my neighborhood and I was afraid for my life. And my mother came and she walked with me. And basically, like, I'm a grown man and my mother had to come walk with me. And the whole thing was just wrong." And his neighbors started reaching out saying, "I'm so sorry you live 2 doors away all this time and I've never known you. I will walk with you." And the next day, he walked with 100 of his neighbors. And the story got picked up. You can find the story. It's a very interesting, and he's continued. So the following week, he walked with 1,000 people, and it has transformed his neighborhood. So what I will say to people who are concerned about walking, and I get that, it's a scary place out there, find a way, if you can, to connect with your community. And if you really can't, and truthfully, if you can't get off your porch and you're not living in a place that is riddled with violence, and maybe you are and your neighborhood truly isn't safe, and that's another conversation. But if you are not living in a place that's really unsafe, you need to work to figure out why your anxiety is so high. Now, I understand why your anxiety is high, but you need to work through that with other people, because it's just going to add to that isolation that's going to make everything worse. Now, believe me, I'm not a mental health expert, and these are real issues, and my daughter is Asian. Like, this is a thing, and I'm not belittling it in any sense, but we can't give into it. We have to find a way as a society to work through it together. And walking is the metaphor for that, right? Taking the first step, walking our way forward. If you think about all the metaphors around walking, it's all because it's that sense of forward momentum that we as human beings crave. I don't know if that really answers the question, but
absolutely. What a beautiful way to see how walking can transform community and really engage. I mean, truly engage. One of my, and I love that your friend, I'm assuming you all had a special bond in that moment. Sean, he was able to use social media in this way that then, had this ripple effect, because sometimes my frustration with social media is that it stops there. It's kind of a place where people rant and nothing else happens. So I love that this is an example of how you can post maybe something that you were frustrated about on social media, and then have the after effect being, your neighbor literally, I don't know if they saw his post on social media or if the energy just got to them next door, and then they were able to really join hands, and how walking can transform communities. I feel like, especially these days, I have a lot of things that I would love to propose for our modern culture to work on, just so that we aren't so isolated and living in bubbles all the time. And walking is a great way to build bridges. So yep. I love that you're tackling that. I'd love to hear if you have more advice, because this is so current. It's so good for the times that are happening right now. I mean, we have so many hate crimes happening all over the world. We have this, fear-based mentality of what can happen with the pandemic and all these things. And it's really just closing us up. So what's something someone can do today, to maybe start their walking journey, knowing all of the benefits that we've talked about in this past hour, but what's something someone can do today just to kind of get it started, get the ball rolling?
It really depends on where they are in their life, where they are in their community, where they are in their journey. The simplest is, I actually challenged the 99 Walks community. This is many, many months ago, But I challenge them to take a picture of themselves, a selfie, not to post, not for anybody else. Take a picture of yourself before you walk. Go take a 20-minute walk and take a picture of yourself at the end and see if you can visually see the way that walk has transformed you. But the simplest way to get started is just like anything to get started. So call a neighbor, call your mother. You don't have to be in the same place. Pick up the phone, call your mother, and take a walk together. 20 minutes on the phone. I reconnected with an old friend of mine that I have not seen in 20 years. And we have been walking and talking together. And she lives on the other side. For you, Mariella, like you've got friends and family on the other side of the planet, right? And here's the other thing, like none of us, I'm thrilled that you guys are all here because nobody wants to sit in front of another Zoom chat. Pick up the phone and take a walk together. Yeah, sometimes you're going to huff and puff as you're walking up a hill.
This is so timely. I love this. So before I spent the first bit of the pandemic, of the lockdown in Buenos Aires, which is like a New York City concrete jungle, blah, blah, blah. And I just remember walking on the patio and looking at all of the buildings and looking at everyone just kind of caged in like we have been domesticated. We are animals now. We can only walk out onto our porch. This was like, the first couple months. And I was always, because I could go out and look at the building in front of me and I would see this couple in this apartment going around in circles. They were walking. And I was grateful for them because I was like, this is so bizarre, but I'm so interested. And I'm connecting the dots now. It's like, they were like, we're going to walk, like, excuse my English, fuck this. I'm going to walk in my apartment and around in circles, even if I look crazy, because they totally looked crazy from my perspective. I'm looking from the next building. I'm looking at these and they're going around in circles, and I would see them sometimes on the rooftop doing the same thing. And I'm like, but now clearly, you got to do what you got to do. And they were like, this is not going to stop us. And I really admired them after seeing them day after day after day doing this. So people, like that's one testament that it can happen, and that it totally, I'm sure that it changed from, you not being able to walk on the streets in the city, and that usually is hustling and bustling. And so what do you do? So I love seeing that, and just like this clear image of like, this is where we are, and the integrity that these people have. That I don't know these people. I will never probably see them just because the city is so big, but I love that. I was really inspired, to say the least. Like at first I thought they were crazy. And then I was really inspired by them. We have just about 5 minutes left. So I just want to end this conversation by talking about 99 walks. So this question was submitted offline. 99 walks is a dream. How long did you hold it quietly in your heart before you bravely stepping forth and making it a reality?
So, there was no delay. And what I mean by that is building community, inspiring people and getting people moving. That has been my life's work. But I never connected the idea of building a community and a movement and a mission around what I discovered the power of walking, until one day I was, surprise, walking with my husband, who said, we were thinking about what's next for us. We've been business partners since the beginning. So 20 some odd years that we've been in business together. And he said, I think there's something to this walking thing. And from the moment we had that conversation to the moment where we started speccing out the app, talking to developers, figuring out the plan, pitching it to our team to see who wanted to explore this with us, there was really no delay. Because that's kind of how we roll. So I have to be really disciplined. If you ask me right now, what's my next dream? There's nothing. This is it. This is all there is for me. I am all in. And because once I find the next thing, then I will do it. So I need to stay right where I am and put everything I have into this. So that's a long way of saying my whole life I've wanted to build community. And that's what I've been doing in different ways, empowering people, women in particular, building bridges, building community, inspiring, empowering, all of those things. That's been my life's work. But how I've done that, once I figure out what that road is, I am on it.
Love that. I love this. Thank you so much for sharing your story. So, do you have anything coming up that you want us to tap into, tune into? I know that you speak a lot on different platforms. Tell us a little bit more about how we can maybe, support your book or just participate in any of the things that you've got going on.
Thank you. So you can find everything 99 Walks at 99walks.fit. And you can find us on social media at 99 Walks, kind of all over the place. And we share quite a bit of content and inspiration and education and all of those things via our social channels, Facebook, Instagram, now on TikTok. I personally am, I'm personally on Instagram is pretty much where I live at Joyce R. Schulman. And I'm working on a new book, but that's not going to see the light of day for probably a year, but hopefully it's in the back of everyone's mind. My first book is called Walk Your Way to Better. It's available on Amazon. And really the only event that we have coming up is the Queen for the Day 5K in May. It's a virtual 5K weekend long celebration. So that's going to be fun. And then 99 Walks is monthly walking challenges for women with an incredible app, daily walking classes, including house walking classes for those of you who, for one reason or another, can't get out of your house, little babies at home, bad weather, whatever it is. We have house walking classes, as well as a whole host walking meditations for those of you who are trying to get more present while you walk and can't sit on a cushion like me. So yeah, a whole suite of things to inspire and motivate and educate.
Well, I am definitely inspired by you, your story, the empire that you're building, the community that you're building. I will definitely support and share this chat as well, as I've learned so much, and I know that our live callers have as well. Thank you for your participation, everyone who joined us live here today. Joyce, thank you so much for your energy, for your integrity, and for sharing this beautiful gift of reminding us the power of walking. I am looking forward to staying in touch and supporting the great things that you're doing. So I invite our live callers to do the same, and we'll see you all on the next chat.
Thank you guys so much for being here.
Bye.